Hey ladies and gents, today I want to have a quick word about splines and how to draw them. Anyone who's used Cinema's spline drawing tools will know they're not the greatest thing ever made, they're not going to win any awards, but there are ways around it. There is a better way of drawing things. Let me just show you the problem. The main spline drawing tool you'll have been using, probably, is the bezier tool. With the bezier spline drawing tool, you click, you drag, it pulls out handles. It's simple and straightforward enough, but typical problem is you've drawn a bit of spline and you think, oh, I know, I need to adjust this point over here. So what do? You click and drag on it. And then you, for some reason, just end up pulling out one tangent handle. Okay, let's adjust this one. Nope, okay, it's fired off into infinity. It's virtually uncontrollable. It's not very nice. Let me show you a better way to draw splines. Let's make a new project here. Okay, tips for splines then. Number one, do not use this bezier spline drawing tool. I know you want to, I know it's useful, but don't. It's just not very good. Instead, we're going to add a blank spline and draw into it. Unfortunately, the object we need is not in the spline menu, at least not this spline menu. Instead, go up to your Create menu, and under the spline menu, you'll find all this stuff here. This is basically just this spline icon, but there's one difference. This has empty spline in it. Add it. Okay, with the splines, to draw into them and to adjust them, you need to be in point mode, because we're really just adjusting the points on the spline. So left-hand side, get your points mode. And my next tip for you is never draw a spline in 3D. Most splines you're making are going to get extruded for the walls in a house, extruded for logos, swept, lathed, and so on. So most times you need them completely flat. Now, because of the way all of these NURBS tools work, all of these extrudes and lofts and such, all of them are expecting your splines to be sitting upright. So, to make things nice and simple, come out to your 4 views and come down here to your front view. That's the bottom right corner by default. If you draw your splines in here, they'll all be orientated in the correct way, ready for these next set of tools to work with them. Okay, so how do we draw them? First of all, make sure you've got this move tool selected. Because we will ultimately be moving points and moving their tangent handles, you want to make sure you've got the move tool, otherwise you're just going to start resizing them, rotating them. And whilst those tools do have a use, they're not the greatest ones for drawing splines. So make sure you've got the move tool, make sure in the point mode, and make sure your spline here is selected. Now, which key you hold next depends on your operating system and which version of Cinema you've got. If you're on a Mac and you've got the latest version, hold down your Apple key, the Command key, the Cloverleaf key. It's got a lot of names. If you've got an older operating system or an older version of Cinema, or if you're on a PC, Windows machine, hold down your Control key instead. Anyway, hold the key down. I'm holding it. Click. If you just start clicking, you'll get a nice linear spline. And if you click and drag, you'll pull out your bezier handles. Now, the nice thing about this is if I ever want to adjust any part of my spline, just let go of the key, and that's it. You can adjust it. No tangent handles flying all over the place. I can pick my point on the spline, and start adjusting it. Nice and easy, no tangents flying all over the place, no horrible things happening. I'm free to adjust my points and move them wherever I like. And if I ever want to resume drawing, hold down the key you pressed before, so Control or Apple, and just continue drawing. If you ever want to draw from the other end of a spline, keep holding the key down, but also hold down Shift. Shift inverts which end of your spline the new points get drawn at. So I can extend it from this end instead. Holding down your Command key, your Control key, also allows you to add points into the spline. So just keep holding it down and I can add a point somewhere along an existing spline. There you go, nice and easy. Yeah, it just generally makes it a lot more straightforward. No faffing around. Whilst we're here though, let me show you a couple more tools, just things which you might not have come across, which they're really useful. One of those is the chamfer tool. Now let's take this corner here. Let's zoom in a bit. Let's say I want to round this corner off. Traditionally, what you might think to do is, oh I know, pop out a pair of bezier handles, that way I can curve it. And sure, that does work. If I right click, I can choose soft interpolation, and that will cause this rigid spline here to get some handles. So I can adjust each of these. But it kind of ruins these leading lines, all these lines we had going up to that point. Unfortunately, they'll get adjusted as well. So if I undo, what you might prefer in the same menu, I may need to zoom out here. What you might prefer instead is the chamfer tool. The chamfer tool works a bit differently. Rather than popping out a pair of handles, it actually takes your spline point and splits it into two. So watch this. I'm going to click and drag with my left mouse button, and I'm going to drag my mouse to the right. Click, drag your mouse. Okay, that makes my zoomed in view jump a little bit. Let's zoom out and try that again. So here we go, click and drag. And you'll see that point there gets split into two new points. But the nice thing about this is that those two lines which were leading up to the point stay exactly where they were. It cuts the rounding into the shape. And you can do this with as many points as you like. If I grab, let's see, these points around here, 1, 2, 3. So long as I'm using my chamfer tool, I can do all three at once, and they'll all round off. Now, a little tip here. If you don't get it right the first time, undo. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make with this chamfer tool is they'll click and drag, and they'll think, oh, nothing happened. I know, I'll try that again. Click and drag, click and drag. Oh, it's not working. Why isn't it working? Every click and drag creates new points. And what they'll have done, let's just undo these. If you just do a small chamfer and you let go and then you click and drag a second time, it does this and it chamfers that new edge. So every time you click and drag, more points appear, more points appear. You can get into a bit of a sticky situation. So if it doesn't go right the first time, just undo and try again. Make sure you really move the mouse. It does take quite a bit of mouse movements. Alternatively, if you know the size you want, you can just dial it in down here in the corner and hit apply. And that's it. It applies that to your corner. Just whilst we're on making corners, just whilst we're rounding things off, if you've got a tangent and you would like to move just one side, maybe trying to make a rigid corner on one end and a nice curve on the other one, get your bezier, click and drag, but hold down Shift. If you hold down Shift, it will allow you to move one side of your tangent handle, which allows you to get sort of cleavage shapes, tidal wave shapes, make a tsunami. But yeah, generally, if you're going to make your own splines, I would advise you to use a blank spline in a flat view and just start drawing into it with your Apple or Control key held down. It certainly beats trying to use this not entirely amazing bezier tool at the top here. Okay, hopefully this will help you out, save you a bit of time.